Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from PJ Media dated September 9th. It says, anti-Israel vandals of a Christian church try to hide behind the First Amendment. You know, because when I go around burning things down, I always try to go, that's free speech. Especially if they're like, large landmarks and things like that. So it says, Texas, again, I'm starting off real good with talking. Texas prosecutors are calling it a felony hate crime, and that's certainly what I would call it too. The defendant's supporters are saying that the church vandalism is protected speech, and you're an absolute spoon if you think that's protected speech. The details tell this story, but they also tell a larger story about the left's current use of the First Amendment to seek outright approval for their worst behaviors. Yeah, everything for them is free speech, and it's like, no, that's not free speech, people. It says, yesterday, one of those defendants, Afshin Khan, showed up in a Texas courtroom where she and two fellow Muslim activists, because of course, face felony hate crime charges. In addition to her attorney, she was joined by several supporters from the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, so one of the worst groups that's in the country right now, and hopefully if the Muslim Brotherhood is banned, they will be banned as well, because they are, and I'm not saying this as a stereotype, I'm saying this because if you go look at their stuff, they are actually like a pro-terrorism group. They argued that arresting Khan and her cohorts for their late-night actions is a violation of the First Amendment rights. And any lawyer that didn't laugh them out of the room when they said that should be disbarred. It says, here's what happened. On March 7th, 2024, surveillance video at Uncommon Church in Euless, Texas, caught three perpetrators spray painting graffiti on the outside walls of the church building. The graffiti featured anti-Israel messages and profanity on a brick wall, such as F Israel, because, they're real original and stuff like that. It says, Khan, Raunik Alam, and Julia Venzor were then identified, arrested, and initially charged with a misdemeanor for the graffiti. Later, Tarrant County prosecutors changed the charges to felony hate crimes based on the prosecutor's contention that the vandalism was motivated by religious bias, which it almost undoubtedly was. If you're checking your bingo card, we have three Muslim activists who targeted a Christian church in Texas with anti-Israel messages. Yeah, so let's just bring all the Abrahamic religions into it, why don't we? It says they allegedly worked under the cover of darkness because that's what people legally expressing themselves with the full protections of the First Amendment do, right? Yeah, this is already ridiculous. It says in their wake, they left a permanent reminder for churchgoers of their deep disdain or hate for Israel. It says the Texas branch of CAIR issued a statement calling for prosecutors to drop the hate crime charges and revert to misdemeanor charges, saying that the organization condemns vandalism of religious sites, including the repeated desecration of mosques with Islamophobic graffiti. Where have you seen that? Where has that been a thing, guys? Seriously, provide me an example of that happening. If it has, it shouldn't happen. Nobody should be doing that. But I'd like to say, I love how CAIR and Muslims like this always revert to the whole Islamophobia thing whenever somebody does something to like Christians or Jews. It's always like, we got to be aware of Islamophobia. It's like, nothing's happening to you guys. Nobody did anything to you. Okay? It's not about you. Stop it. Okay? So it says, such acts cause real harm to communities of faith. At the same time, applying hate crime enhancements to graffiti that criticizes a foreign government misapplies the law. It's not, you're morons. You're stupid. It says, and there it is. You can target a Christian church, but that isn't hate. And you can spray paint profane messages about Israel on said Christian church, but that isn't hate. In fact, according to Khan supporter Nida Lafi, it's free speech, because this person is apparently what we call in the scientific community a retard, and I'm using bunny ears around the word retard. She said, it is a case that is placing our First Amendment rights and our sense of justice on trial. No, it quite literally is not. As we are now deep into the perpetrator is the real victim here territory, and no kidding. Says Khan's attorney, Allison Grintler Allen, who should have laughed these people out of the room instead of taking up the case, but CAIR probably paid her a real lot of money, says, I think that protest, graffiti, that sort of thing is the language of folks who are unheard. Trust me, they are anything but unheard, lady. Says, and so my heart went out to them. Okay, so this is an idiot. What Khan's attorney and supporters are doing is drawing the Zionist distinction between the state of Israel and the Jewish people and the Jewish religion, all while trying to distract from the fact that the vandals physically targeted and damaged an actual religious building. Alam's attorney, Adwoa Asante, said in a court filing on May 5th, 2025, if citizens and persons within the United States are allowed to say and express F America, why would the condemnation of a foreign country garner more enhanced prosecution from the state of Texas? Okay, so this attorney, again, is a dumbass. There are stupid attorneys out there, people. Just because you're highly educated does not mean you're intelligent, and this is someone who clearly is highly educated but unintelligent. See Hostin, Sonny. Again, the perpetrators didn't merely say how they felt, but rather they spray-painted it onto a religious building, a fact that Asante seems to have overlooked. Yeah, no kidding. The defense position, and that of the alleged Vandal supporters here, is consistent with the larger movement to use the First Amendment as a shield for everything from censorship to non-peaceful and sometimes outright violent protests and demonstrations. In April of this year, Harvard University sued the Trump administration after it froze federal monies that had been directed to the institution. The school said that the funding freeze was a violation of its First Amendment rights because it was coercive in suppressing the university's speech. What was that speech? Yeah, exactly. We're just going to use the First Amendment for everything. It's a violation of the First Amendment. People are just going to be like, what? I mean, because that's why I wanted to do this article and read about it, is because I saw that, I read the first sentence and I was like, oh, I got to talk about this. And that's all I had read up until this point right now. But I was like, this is going to be ridiculous. And sure enough, it is living right up to that. So the Trump administration said that Harvard failed to combat anti-Semitic bias effectively, that the school did not do enough to address anti-Israel and anti-Jewish protests on campus, that Harvard, in effect, allowed the festering of anti-Semitism on campus, creating an unsafe environment for Jewish students. In May, NPR and PBS filed suit against the Trump administration over an executive order that cut funding to both networks. The order claimed in part that NPR and PBS offered biased or partisan coverage, and that taxpayer dollars shouldn't support media that fail to present fair and balanced reporting, and I believe that's 100% correct. NPR's lawsuit, in response, argued that the executive order represents unconstitutional retaliation, viewpoint-based discrimination, and interference with the right of free association, all in violation of the First Amendment. In other words, censorship is protected by the First Amendment even when government monies are used to censor. And who could forget the summer of 2020, where those mostly peaceful protests across the country led to billions of dollars in damage, gutted cities and neighborhoods, and led to the deaths of 25 people. Oh, it's down to 25 because it was at 32 last I looked, but I'll take 25 for it. Still a couple dozen people. But the left will obtusely tell you that the First Amendment protected all of it, which is again a stupid argument. It says back in Texas, in Alam's indictment, Tarrant County prosecutors state that Alam demonstrated bias or prejudice against a group identified by national origin and or ancestry and or religion, namely the state of Israel or Jewish faith. I don't mind people putting F Israel on there, but if you're going to a church and doing that, like, it's kind of like you're obviously going to a church for a reason. Like, if you were just to do it like on like a bridge or something like that, okay, fine. I can see why they'd say drop the First Amendment thing, but you're going to a church, there's a specific meaning behind that. That seems like you're doing that on purpose. So, sorry, I kind of agree with the hate crime enhancement thing. Because under the hate crime statute, the 3 Tarrant County defendants, each of whom will be tried separately, now face from 2 to 10 years behind bars. Oh no, that's just too bad. It's worth noting that the crime in question occurred under President Joe Biden's watch, a time when, for most on the left, it was unfathomable, there we go, that Donald Trump would return to the White House. In such a world, it was equally unfathomable, got it right that time, to consider prison time as a consequence for such an act. But the world has changed, and now Trump has their attention. That he does. And again, this is a ridiculous thing that these people are trying to use. Let's go deface a church and just say it's First Amendment protected speech. It is not, and I hope you guys get sentenced to the fullest extent of the law, and I don't care. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.